Welcome to episode 27 of Paul the Other One with me, Paul Cox. This episode, I have taken the time to contemplate. And what I have found is that my journey in life to this point has largely been driven by my innate desire to want to prove other people wrong. Not healthy, but very productive, it would seem. Listen to my journey in my monologue. I then review me reviewing the stories on GB News headliners from this week. And we also have another sexually charged ridiculousness for you all to enjoy. Before further ado, let's slide into this like Joe Biden getting into his special sit-down bath. I sat down to write recently and had an epiphany. I spent the first 34 years of my life achieving things only because someone said I couldn't. If someone said, you won't or can't do that, it was the green light for me to do everything I could to prove them wrong. I ended up in a job I hated just because someone said there was no way I could achieve it. I did everything I could to get out and promised myself I would use that unrelenting focus to only do the things that made me happy. Interestingly, since I started doing that, I only really meet people who are like-minded. These people aren't really saying, you can't. They are saying, I don't want you to. That said, I owe them a lot because fuck me, did I get a lot done proving those pricks wrong. I've always had an innate sense that I can achieve anything. Not an arrogance, I'm too self-aware and self-deprecating for that, but definitely a you just fucking watch me attitude. I enjoy being the underdog, and nothing inspires me more than other people doubting me. My wife has learned that no matter how crazy my ideas are, not to say, you can't do that. Instead, she says, okay, cool, what's the plan? Because she knows that once everyone believes in me, I lose interest. After all, what's the point of achieving things that people already think you are capable of? I've never quite figured out why. Perhaps it's part of my scrappy working class roots, or maybe it's just that I really, really enjoy the fight. On the whole, I have an agreeable demeanour. My default position is to want to help others. But the minute I'm told you're not good enough, or it's just not possible, something goes off inside. Obviously, it doesn't apply to everything. If someone says, you can't jump over that pylon, I agree, and that's the end of it. It must be something I want to do. And by the time I've decided I want to do this thing, I have given it a ridiculous amount of thought. I think that's what surprises people the most, the fact that I am diligent. I come across as kind of haphazard and maybe a little ill-prepared. But that's only some of the time. I'm a talker, so people think it's impossible for me to keep things to myself. But trust me, I don't talk about 90% of my thoughts. I daren't. There are unwritten rules of polite society that discourage it. I always think of the same three examples to prove this is the case. As a child, I was subjected to a lot of financial uncertainty, shall we say. It shaped every thought I ever had about money from that point on. As a very young man, I made the bold statement that I would never get an overdraft. Instead, opting to manage my money carefully and live within my means. Can you imagine? I discussed this with a close family member and was laughed out of the room. I've never forgotten that conversation, and I've never used an overdraft. I've even told people I have used an overdraft just so they don't feel bad. Because as I said at the beginning, people aren't telling you you can't, they are telling you they don't want you to because it reflects badly on them. And I'd rather people didn't feel bad, even the shit ones. If I have learned anything, it's that most people are only capable of seeing the world through their eyes. The opposite way of thinking requires so much critical thinking and empathy that your average narcissist really does struggle. Example 2 is when I first started work. I was a storeman in an electronics engineering business. Playing golf one time with one of the engineers, I shanked my ball into the woods. Instead of just taking the piss, he said, "That's why I'm an engineer and you're a storeman, Paul." Weird, and I doubt it's never been said at the Ryder Cup. Until that point, I had never really considered being an engineer. Sure, they were paid a lot more, but I thought you had to be very clever to be an engineer. This comment proved to me that was not the case and spurred me on. Within 4 years, I had a HND in electronic and electrical engineering. I'm still not sure to this day if I enjoyed any of it, but I had proven that self-loathing munchkin wrong. Job done, I thought. Until a few years into being an engineer, I told someone I'd like to be a project manager. Ooh, big ambitions. Their response was that it was impossible, especially in the time frame that I had set out for someone like me. Well, that was that, wasn't it? 3 years later, I was back talking to that very same person as the operations manager of the entire business, with all the project managers reporting to me. I fucking hated that job. It was a job that everyone wanted, and I was only doing it to prove I could. Fucking mental. To many, I actually left that job under a cloud. To me, I left that job after a year of trying really hard to get the fuck out. I was so happy to leave. It didn't matter to me what anyone thought. I knew that the people that really knew me wouldn't care. I was very wrong about that, and that's a story for another time. By this time, I was 34 years old and started to see a pattern occurring. I knew that I couldn't sit around waiting for someone to tell me I couldn't do something I really wanted to do, so I made some choices of my own. I had two burning ambitions. One, work for myself, and two, somehow, some way, be involved in comedy. This plan started about a year before I left my last job, and today I know one thing that I didn't know then. I had to get as far away from some people as possible to start afresh. That was hard, like really, really hard. I learned that relationships I had invested in were utter wank, and it was a bitter pill to swallow. Most importantly, I learned a very valuable lesson. Never, ever stay close to people who hate to see you succeed. That's not to say you shouldn't be around people who challenge you. That's probably as important as having trusted friends. I come off really quite well in this, but that's only with hindsight. During that journey, I made many mistakes. The problem with unrelenting focus is that it only allows you to see the goal, not the debris you leave in your wake. And let's face it, I haven't conquered the world, but I am conquering my own little world because I'm setting my own challenges. I still have a lot to learn, and I know I need to reduce those debris piles either side of my focus path. Nearly every philosopher has said it doesn't matter what other people think. That's not strictly true, but the essence is correct. Who are you trying to please? Your family, loved ones, or the fucknut that never liked you anyway? After all, no one has ever lied on their deathbed regretting they failed to impress one of life's wank socks. Although, now I've said it out loud, challenge accepted, Paul. A story in The Guardian told us that the UK is among the countries with the most positive attitude towards refugee poll finds. I thought this was good news. A lot of people in the Twitter comments after the show on Sunday evening thought GB News had gone woke because of this, but I think they were driven by the need to tell everyone that immigration is at the root of all our problems in this country. I'm not denying there is some truth in that. After all, our system has a critical mass at which it can operate successfully, and that is being exceeded in a lot of places. However, this was in The Guardian, the paper that makes its money from telling champagne socialists that everyone is racist, especially the working man. What this and other recent polls has shown us is that the UK is not especially racist and is very welcoming, perhaps too welcoming for its own good. This poll both complements and contradicts everything the Guardian readers believe in. They love immigration. All immigrants are yummy, but they hate average Joes. Average Joes are bad, unintelligent, degenerates that really like immigrants too, apparently. Fuck me.
Josh, and a survey where they probably didn't ask some headliners panellists.
UK is among countries with the most positive attitude towards refugees, poll finds. So this is 22,000 adults across 29 countries. Found British people had the third most enthusiastic outlook, just behind Spain and New Zealand. It's ironic that New Zealand is has such a positive attitude towards migrants, is because it's so hard to get there, number one. And number two is, and my aunt and uncle tried to move there recently and it's like they make it so difficult. You have to have like loads of money, you have to be able to take care of yourself, all this. So this idea that I'm sure they're pro the idea of it, but the reality of it is it seems very much remains a closed society. Anyway, let's talk about Britain, and 56% of Britons believe that refugees make a positive contribution compared to 45% internationally. There's lots of these kind of statistics that more than half of Britons think that refugees should be allowed to stay. And I talked about this the other day, but I think that what is interesting here is how some people, what they think of when they think of migrants. And I think some people think of Afghani women who were being subjected to the misogyny of the Taliban government, not being able to be educated and go to girls to school, and also Afghanis who helped British people when we were over there and whatnot. And some people think of Albanian 20-year-olds coming over and getting up to, criminal activity. So the truth is, of course, there's bits of both. And I think that some of this, the wording of this, seems to focus more on the latter. Like when it's talking about people in need, I think, yes, people do. We're a fair society. That's what arguably makes us British, that we should help out and whatnot. And certainly when you're seeing, I think it's 100 million people get migrants, or is that 100 million internationally displaced people for the last time. So it's growing, and it's only going to grow with more environmental disasters and whatnot. I think Britain feels like, yes, we should take our fair share, but I think we need to have control over who those people are that we let in.
Paul, do you think this survey chimes with what we read in the press a lot?
Well, it depends what press you read. I mean, this must irk, I think, The Guardian slightly, because this is now two polls in the space of 2 months that is basically suggesting that us Brits are a pretty flexible, amenable, welcoming people, which I think most of us believe anyway. I know that there's different ends of the spectrum, and you get to see the worst of each reported, because that's what makes the news. But they've definitely gone and framed this in a way that brings it back to being a Guardian article. Because, for instance, they say, despite increased hospitality, far from it, hostility for the UK government.
Barges.
So I don't see. I want to stick up for the Tories slightly here, I'm afraid, because I don't think the government are necessarily hostile about the people. They're hostile about the problem, and it's getting to a point now where the only way they can win votes is to prove that they can stop this problem. Whoever gets into power is going to have to stop this problem one way or the other, and it's not because I don't think it's a personal issue. I think it's a group issue, and our resources can't sustain it.
It turns out that not all people like men walking around topless in this hot weather, me included, but perhaps I'm just jealous, because my man boobs and pasty see-through skin are just not worth showing off.
On Sunday, Paul, and not all toplessness is equal.
Well, no, it's definitely not, that's for sure. With temperatures around 30 degrees, I don't know if you've noticed, it's been quite warm recently in parts of the UK over the last few days. Many among us will want to wear as little as possible to keep cool, but shirtless men in particular have come under fire from angry Reddit users. All Reddit users are angry, so I don't think that differentiates them whatsoever, with some even going as far to say they should go to jail. Now, I'm not a man who's ever really been topless. I've never really had the body for it. Usually topless guys are showing off, generally.
Definitely.
Usually a tattoo. They've gone to this great expense to having a wonderful eagle tattoo or whatever, peace, love, cage fighting.
They're definitely vain. They show off a lot, topless men.
So you don't get... I mean, I drove through Holland Park to get here today. Not one topless man. There's no topless men in Holland Park. I was in Holland Park. You weren't topless, though?
No, I save it for later on.
You save it when you get to other parts of London.
Yeah.
What I would say, though, is this is a very small demographic of people. I don't think None of us strike. None of you guys strike me as people who. Well, one of the. You might go in your back garden.
No, I don't think any of us would go shirtless, topless.
How short-sighted are you, by the way?
I absolutely did not see that to you.
Your wife does not need to worry about you checking out cleavage. Look at that. The eyes.
Did you see that before I did?
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Chest out.
I had no idea.
Any excuse. It's a story I'm trying to do.
My brain just accepted that, Josh. It just accepted it.
Because that's how I walk around the office.
I'm not prejudiced.
How long is your beard these days?
Yeah.
All the way down.
Like, it's such a nightmare because it's like, we're going to go on air in a second. All right, here we go. Let's put it back up again.
Right, to the
This section is where I invite you, the listener, to send in your most ridiculous moments of the week. However, it seems to be turning into a cross between Mills and Boon and Viz, because I have another dildo story. Unbelievable. Another dildo story. This time, I didn't receive a voice note, so I'm going to have to read it out for you. So buckle your trousers back up, put the Kleenex away, and just hear it out. I'm going to have to do it in the voice of Barry Gobble, I guess, because I can't do it in the sexy voice that I'm imagining it was supposed to be done in. So, last Sunday, I say to my mum, I'm going for a sleep. You know, make sure she doesn't come in anyway. 30 minutes later, she comes in, and a certain drawer is open. There's like things out. Let's just say the things were somewhere, i.e. inside me. She sits down on the edge of the bed in silence, and I'm thinking, fuck me, who's dead? And says, do you want a Sunday dinner? Absolutely raging I was. I am yet to come across a bigger passion killer. Anyway, if it couldn't get any worse, I type this long ass text to my mate and tell him, really graphically, and he was driving with a bloke I proper fancy we work with. And ask Siri to read it out, not knowing what I've put. So Siri reads out the whole fucking thing at high volume in the car. You couldn't make this shit up. I'm wondering if you have, to be honest. How am I going to look him in the eye this week? I just don't know. Ridiculous. Yes, it is ridiculous, but thanks for sharing, Louise. If anyone has any non-dildo related ridiculousness they'd like to share with me, please send it to paultheotherone101@gmail.com. That's paultheotherone101@gmail.com. Cheers. Thanks for watching and listening. Please subscribe and feel free to comment. I love your comments. This week, you can find me on Headliners on Thursday and Sunday, and you can follow me on all forms of social media at Paul Cox Comedy. Until next time, don't be a dick. Leave that to me.